Be sure to friend us on Facebook. You can do it right now. Visit facebook.com/Voice America or search for us at keyword Voice America.
The following program is being brought to you on the Voice America Variety Channel. For more information about our network and to check our additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit voiceamericavariety.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live Internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the following program are strictly those of the host or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the Voice America Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.
Welcome to Strategies for Financial Survival with Michael Figueroa. When financial adversity hits, and it very well may hit you, it's those that educate themselves and use their skills that will survive, no matter what field you're in. Now, here's your host, Michael Figueroa.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the show. Today, we're going to be talking to Danny Gould and going over another situation where he has started a business. And what I've mentioned to him, as I mentioned to most of the listening audience, the situations that we're looking at are when you have a existing employment arrangement with someone and it either happens that you're going to be laid off or you can't take it anymore, you might say, regarding working under somebody, or for just the spark that it's time for me to go and do my own thing. This is the basis for how you get started, what you do. And so we've been having a number of people explain how they started their own businesses and why. And today, with Danny, Danny's now 31 years old, and he's going to give you a really good background on how he started out. And it is the classical, to me, the most difficult of how to go from a situation of security at home to being out in the field right away and surviving and dealing with what you face as you try to start your business. So, Danny, let me have you introduce yourself, how people can contact you, and give us a little bit of your resume right now before we go into what you do and how you did it.
All right, fantastic. Thanks a lot, Michael. Appreciate you having me on the show today. My name is Danny Gould, and I started and co-founded Capital Connect. That can be found at www.capitalconnect.com, capitalconnect.com. You can reach me at Danny, D-A-N-N-Y, at capitalconnect.com, and my phone number is 520-591-7715. And like you were saying, Michael, several years ago, about a little more than 5 years ago, I was working with a security company and had been very successful with this company, and in years leading up to this point in my life was making great money. But I saw an opportunity to build my own company. I sensed a couple things that were going wrong with the company that I was working with. That company later on went to bankrupt itself, but I sensed a couple things that were wrong. A lot of the people that I was working with, they were good people. I necessarily didn't have any complaints with in that regard. But I felt in some of the processes and procedures that this company was conducting its business that it could be done a better way. And I didn't think that I was necessarily naturally gifted to or more intelligent per se than the people that were running this company. But to me, it just seemed that there was a difference between common sense and a fictitious way of doing business. And I decided to open up my own company, and that was about 5 years ago. And now today we started the company in Arizona, and we are now operating in about 12 other states, and with revenue in well over $10 million a year. And so it's been a fantastic ride thus far.
Let me ask you the key things that most people would want to know is how did you make that jump? So here I'm looking at this and I'm saying I'm working for a company right now, and I believe you were a salesman with the company. And what was exactly the trigger, the thought process that said, I think it's time to go? And by the way, what am I going to do? And did you establish a business plan? Did you talk to advisors like family, friends, business associates, lawyers, CPAs? Give me more of a detail so that people can see how to step out of the shadow and actually take the jump across the divide.
Fantastic. That is correct. When I was working with this other company before I opened up Capital Connect, I was working in the sales department. I was also in the recruiting department. I was a recruiter of salesmen / trainer of salesmen, and my job was to employ as many sales representatives as possible for this company, direct them in their sales in various states. And when I decided to make the jump, I did speak with multiple individuals, as you mentioned, family members, friends, colleagues, CPAs, lawyers, advisors, all of the above. I think the very first point of advice that I'd give to everyone who's listening, if they are contemplating a similar jump or have already embarked on a path of being an entrepreneur, of starting their own business, is rule number one is this, is you have to be honest with yourself. You have to understand what your strengths are. You cannot live in a world of fiction and nonfiction. You have to understand what reality is, what kind of a country we live in, what kind of economy we live in, what the demographics of the type of business, where you're going to be operating this business, and what kind of demographics you're going to be operating in. I find a common misstep by a lot of entrepreneurs in the very beginning stages of starting their own business, where they are driven and they have a ton of willpower, but they tend to let their dream overtake what is reality. One of the very first things that I realized is this, is I was honest with myself and said, hey, you have weaknesses, and you have to figure out a way to fulfill those weaknesses and turn them into strengths. And one of the very first things that I did was I went and talked to the people who had those strengths that I didn't possess. You know, I remember a long time ago, maybe 10 years ago, I was reading a book. It was talking about Charles Schwab. Great American steel worker, went on to be highly successful. And a lot of individuals asked him and complimented him and said, you're brilliant, the things that you've been able to accomplish. And he laughed at them and said, no, I'm not brilliant, but the people that I worked with, they were brilliant. And one of the very first things that I did and decided to do when I made the jump was I need to find the people that possess the strengths that I personally don't have in order to be able to operate a business. One of the things I'm great at is I'm great with people. I'm great with sales. I'm great with recruiting. I'm great with training. I'm not a great CPA. I'm not a great balancer of the budget. What about building up your corporate staff, handling customer service problems? That's not my forte. And so zoning in on all of these weaknesses that I had right from the get-go, recognizing I won't be able to really do these at their optimum level, what they will need to be operated at in order to be successful and build a successful company. And so that was the very first thing. I had to be honest with myself. And one of the interesting things is this. As an entrepreneur, very commonly, you tend to think highly of yourself, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but you also have to be honest with yourself and realize what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. and fill up those weaknesses with the correct people, whether you partner with them, whether you employ them. And one of the things that I always did was I found people that were smarter than me, that were more experienced than me, and that had better credentials than me. And if somehow you're able to do that and convince them that your idea, that your business plan, that your service that you're going to go into business with can be successful with their help, you're going to be okay, more than likely. As long as you do your part and they do their part, you should be okay.
Let me mention something here. I wanted to ask how you were able to convince different people to work with you, but I want to point out that when you decided to do this, married with children at the time?
Correct. I had one child at the time I was married.
Okay. And what type of reserves would you say you had when you decided to do this?
You know, my reserves, to be completely honest, weren't at their highest point. Naturally, as a salesman, unfortunately, and I would advise all salesmen that are listening to this, you lead a very high consumption lifestyle. Kind of comes with the territory, and that necessarily isn't the smartest thing to do. You know, I had some reserves, but I didn't have enough reserves in order to fund my business, and that was a huge weakness. So naturally, I had to go and find those funds, and I had to go find that capital. And unfortunately, I decided to open up the company in January of 2008 on the cusp of the Great Recession that we have all been living through for the past 5 years. And, you know, 2008, you could walk into a bank with a first and last name and walk out with a loan. Still to this day, people aren't able to get loans. And so I didn't have a lot of reserves. And so I went and spoke with a few potential investors who believed in what the service that I was going to provide with this company. They believed in it, and they decided to jump on board with me, which was great.
Did you write up a business plan? Did you have something that you together for them, or were they related to you, or really outsiders that you had to convince that you were going to succeed and they were not your father or brother or uncle?
Absolutely. No, I didn't go into business with my father or brother or uncle. You have to go in with a business plan. You absolutely have to. And one of the biggest reasons why you have to know what you're doing, what you're presenting to these investors is in the very beginning, investors, they have all the leverage. You, as an entrepreneur seeking capital, you're going to be a little bit vulnerable. And it's sort of like a Shark Tank, if you will. And you need to be able to present a plan to them that shows they will make money and that this business will be successful, as with their participation in the business. And at the same time, it has to be a convincing enough business plan and planned out well enough so that you don't lose your shirt in the deal. For example, and these investors swallow up all the equity if you do a deal with equity, or whether it's just debt and interest. Most investors that are on their game are going to want equity, so that you don't lose all of that. Because if you do build a successful business and 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, you know, potentially is making a lot of money, you want to be able to cash in on that as well, and experience the success and good fortune of that, and not just the people that invested in with you.
On a side note, what did your wife say when you decided to leave a secure job and do your own business? Was she supportive or extremely nervous because you had a small child at the time?
All of the above. My wife, she's absolutely, you know, I spoke with her about it, and we talked about it for a long time. We prayed about it. We thought about it. We spoke with a few other individuals to get their opinion about it. And naturally, you know, women, they especially, a wife with a daughter wants security, and starting your own company, you're walking into the unknown. She supported me. She was nervous, absolutely. But at the same time, one of the things that I'm very appreciative of is she got behind me, showed her confidence in me, which helped me believe in myself as well. And I'm pretty appreciative of that for her.
Yeah, I think that's a major issue, to make sure that you have the support of your family members, and of course, family being your wife and your, if they're old enough. But we're going to be coming on a break soon. But what I'd like to do is touch on and then follow up after the break on what type of resistance or support did you find from the investors? So going out trying to solicit the money, how many times did you get rejected, or did you get approved right away, made the investor say, okay, I think I'll put in X dollars? And about how much was in money were you trying to raise?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. When I knew that I could open up this company and build it, I started making a list of the individuals that I would approach for capital. And the individual that I approached, who is now my business partner, Garrett Rustan, I put him at the top of my list because I felt, one, that he was the best partner, and two, I felt that he was going to be the one that would believe it in the most, and at the same time also had the necessary capital in order to fund the business.
Was he going to be a working partner or just an investor partner?
Initially, just an investor partner, and it has now grown into, the business has grown over the years and succeeded, and we've been fortunate in that. And he is now working in the business as well, and so he slowly integrated into a working relationship with the company as well. Initially, we didn't need millions of dollars. One of the biggest points of resistance that I'll touch on after the break as well is these investors. They said to me, we'll supply the money, we'll have the money ready, and we will provide it as the company is needed. But you're also going to have to prove in the first year that this company can be cash flowing, that it can generate revenue. Because if it does not, then we are going to pull back and you will not have that capital. And so that added the pressure, but I expected that as well, because if I were an investor in their shoes, and I wouldn't want to have an untapped line of credit, an unlimited line of credit that was feeding a company that couldn't be successful. So I'll touch more on that later after the break as well.
Okay. Well, it looks like we're here at the break, so let the break occur, and we will be back to finish off and hear more about how Danny was able to raise money and what you have to convince an investor in order to be able to raise capital for your business. And now we go to the break.
The Internet's #1 talk station. #1 talk station. VoiceAmerica.com. At Intuitive Strategies, LLC, we provide services to our clients that help them develop a strong education in business. And we also help them to develop a strategy that will allow them to turn their skills into a profit, protect their business and personal assets, and plan for a successful retirement. Our consulting and structuring services include business analysis, budget analysis, management analysis, ability to raise capital from investors, tax planning to minimize tax liability under code, as well as legal structure to protect business from frivolous lawsuits. Resolution Capital Strategies also provides document preparation services such as business structuring documents, documents that establish an entity, management agreements, retirement plans, estate planning, wills, and trusts. Let Resolution Capital Strategies help you with your business. Visit intuitivestartup.com or call us in Tucson at 520-425-8759. Visit intuitivestartup.com today.
Stimulating talk.
Gets those synapses in the brain firing really fast.
All the time. The number one internet talk station where your opinion counts. VoiceAmerica.com.
You are listening to Strategies for Financial Survival with your host, Michael Figueroa. If you have a question or comment about the program, please send us an email to support@intuitivestartup.com. That's support@intuitivestartup.com. Now, back to Strategies for Financial Survival.
Welcome back, everyone. So we were talking with Danny regarding the point of how you raise capital for your business and what gets an investor to actually put money up and what they expect to have, and what posts that you have to pass in order to keep them interested and keep them funding as your business starts to grow. So, Danny, let's continue on. We were talking about what of resistance that the investors wanted to see you overcome, and then as that was accomplished, how they continue to fund. And I believe you mentioned you had this one investor that then became a partner with you. So give us a little background on going from the money raising to how this partner decided instead of being just a partner, maybe I'll come in and I'll be a funder. I may come in and be a partner in the business.
Absolutely. When I embarked on opening the company and seeking capital, the very first thing that I knew was this, is we could get the company cash flowing, generating revenues within about 3 to 6 months of sales. I knew at that point in time, I needed enough capital to build up the company where we would be able to recruit over enough sales representatives, because at the end of the day, if you do not sell your product, it doesn't matter what kind of company you have, whether you're selling security systems, whether you're selling toothbrushes, whether you're a dentist, doctor, lawyer, if you are not acquiring customers, you're not going to be in business. I had to find enough capital from an investor right from the get-go of the company in order to bridge a gap of about 3 to 6 months worth of sales. And I'll talk more about that here shortly. When I sought out this capital, they made it very clear, the investor made it very clear that you need to be able to prove that this product can be sold and that you can lead the teams to sell this product. A common mistake that I see a lot of entrepreneurs doing, and I've had the opportunity to meet with a lot of great entrepreneurs with a lot of great ideas for products and services, they feel that they cannot start prospecting their product to the public until every single piece of their company is built up. And then one day they will turn on a light switch and they will start selling their product.
I don't think that ever happens, does it?
Never does. Never does. You have to start selling from day one. And I'll be completely honest. I started my company out of my garage. Now we have multiple buildings in several different states, and we've grown to that size. But we weren't pretty in the beginning. And a lot of entrepreneurs believe that you have to be pretty, that you have to have a big building, nice desks, and everything of that nature in order to start opening a company. And that is not the truth. You need one thing and one thing only, and that is sales. If you do not have sales, you have nothing. Because if money isn't coming into the company, you're not going to make money, obviously. Investors aren't going to fork up capital in order to fund the growth of the company. And so right away I knew that I needed to get sales and find enough capital to bridge the gap until sales started coming in, where that money would hit the company's bank accounts, that revenue would be seen, and then more capital would be invested into the company to be supplied for more growth opportunities. Over the years, in year one, we did approximately, $500,000 in revenue. In year two, a couple million. And each year it just grew and grew and grew. When we started getting close to an 8-figure revenue number, the company was in a different spot now. At the same time, like I was saying, you have to know your weaknesses and you have to know your strengths. Even as you're growing, in year one versus year three or the start of year four, you now have new problems. You now have new needs as a company. You need to bring in more personnel with more skills and more expertise. And that started the process of my initial partner, Garrett Rustan, an initial investor into Capital Connect, and to start playing a more key role into the company on the day-to-day operations, as opposed to just being an investor. He has a tremendous background. He worked in the financial service industry for a long time, previous to Capital Connect, had experienced great success in that field, and had built up a great book of business and had proven himself. Like I was saying, you need to find the individuals that have more strengths in areas where you have weaknesses so that you can bring them in, and they can take care of your weaknesses. And as the company grew and got to a certain size, as we were growing outside of Arizona, going into California, Nevada, Utah, New Mexico, Texas, Florida, Oregon, Washington, that called for more people on deck on the day-to-day operations. Garrett has also played a key role in hiring other individuals that could help us build our corporate staff to endure more of a nationwide company with customers that need service in Florida, but we're located in Arizona. And so naturally, as the company grows, you're going to incur new problems, bigger problems than you had in day one. And
let me shoot a question here.
Sure.
So in the beginning, it was you and you, or was it you and your wife? Who, when you first went out on your own, how many people did you have initially?
It was myself and one other salesman.
Okay, so when Garrett came in at first as an investor,
Mm-hmm.
how did you start to differentiate between, okay, I'm selling, I'm budgeting, I'm managing, I'm meeting, I'm marketing, and say, I can't do it all, I need some help, and I'm going to divide this person, I'm going to look for a person to take over this part of the business, and evidently you brought in Garrett, and what made him say, okay, I'll do it, because I take it he was a bit older than you were.
Yeah, well, he's a few years older than I, has more experience, had incurred more experience in the business world. In the very beginning, obviously, Garrett was the investor, my partner was the investor, and I was the salesman, I was the manager, I was the secretary, I was the gopher, I was everything. And in month number 2, we realized, okay, we've started to generate a few sales. We need a little more help. And so we found a secretary who could take care of more of the clerical filing of papers, processing the paperwork of customers, of sales that were coming in. And that was a pretty simple thing. We listed jobs on Craigslist, Monster.com, CareerBuilder.com. And hiring people was a very, very difficult thing to do, because you as an entrepreneurs that are listening to this show, you don't necessarily work for an hourly rate. You eat what you kill. You make what you sell. But a lot of the individuals that you hire into your company they're going to want, that $10, $12 an hour to be a secretary, or if it's a more complex role, a salary with benefits and things of that nature. And in the very beginning, we would prospect on Monster.com, on Craigslist.com. I think in the first 3 months of the company, we went through about 5 different secretaries. Simply due to the fact that finding good people to complement your business, at the same time, not overpaying them, because you can't do that as an entrepreneur and as a startup company, because then you lose money. That was a challenge. And at the end of the day, it's a lot of trial and error, and it's a lot of stomaching those growing pains so that you can wake up the next day and say, I got to go find another secretary, because if I don't have a secretary, then I am going to be pulled into the secretary position. If I'm pulled into the secretary position, I'm not out there with my sales reps, training them, teaching them, helping them get more sales, which ultimately lead to what? More sales to the company. And so, those are trials that you're naturally going to run into.
One of the things to point out too is that you probably, how many hours a day did you put into the business, especially in the beginning? So there's no life. I would assume that you'd be starting at about 5 to 10 o'clock. I'm not sure what you would do, but I remember those days.
No, absolutely. It's you eat, sleep, and breathe the business, and especially at the same time. I was married and I had a daughter, and we wanted to have more children. We now have 2 kids, 2 beautiful kids, and we wanted to be a growing family. And so I initially felt that pressure of being a husband and a father, of saying I need to provide. But I'm going to tell you this much, because I hear that a lot of people have that pressure. That necessarily wasn't my, this is going to sound wrong, my main motivation. It's absolutely at number 1, top of the priority list. But I knew I could be a successful entrepreneur, and I had that drive, and I knew I could build this company. And it was almost being accountable to myself, because if I wasn't going to be accountable to myself, how could I be accountable to my wife, to my kids, and everyone else? And it was, you wake up, you go to work, and you work until you go to bed. And if there's anyone to thank for those days, it's my wife, for having the patience, of putting up with how much went into building up the business in the early days, in the first few years.
Give us a few examples of some of the problems that you encountered when you started out. One of the things you pointed out is how to be able to get a good a secretary helper. What are some of the other that you hit? Did you have issues that when you're trying to sell something, a customer looks at this and says, "Who are you? You're not Walmart or ADT."
Absolutely.
So how do you convince somebody to take a chance on you as a young guy just starting out?
Absolutely. That is the typical common growing pains of starting up a business. You have a lot of trial and error, a lot of bumps in the road, a lot of no's. A lot of people say that they can take rejection, and in a startup company, you have to be able to take rejection. You have to know that you will have people that will say yes to your product. You will have sales reps that you are hiring on to your company because you need sales reps who can go and sell your product, whatever product it is. You need to be able to convince them and say, yeah, I'm operating out of my garage, and the company that you're currently working for, our competitor, they're operating out of a 100,000 square foot building. And you might only be told yes once out of every 20 customers you approach, or once out of every 20 sales reps that you approach, and you don't stop. You don't stop. You keep going. And I know that's a very cliche way of putting it. But the reality is this. In my experience in being an entrepreneur and building up a startup company, I go back to that cliche of the secret to success is hard work. And everyone says that they can work hard. And I believe that everyone truly has that potential. But it's being able to continue time after time after time after time after time of being told no. Overcoming those objections is putting on your best face and kind of faking it until you make it. You're going to endure those challenges. There's no other way of putting it in building up a startup company. You're going to be told no. And if you envision anything but that, you're not being honest with yourself. You have to be prepared for that. And I think that when you are prepared for that, the no's aren't as painful because you were expecting that. And you know that, hey, this is just part of the startup process. Let's keep going. Someone's going to say yes. A lot of people would make those comparisons of your biggest competitor, has been in business for 100 years and you've been in business for 1 month. You have to be able to answer those questions. How do you answer those questions? Well, I guess it really depends on how much you believe in yourself and how much you believe in the product that you're selling, that it is just as good, if not better. Some of the things that I would talk about is saying, yeah, you know what? My competitor has been in business for 100 years, and they have probably about 10 million customers. So you can be one of 10 million, or you can be, one of very few. We're going to be able to take care of you when you need us. It's those kind of sales pitches. It's those kind of dialogues with customers that you present to them and tell them, we are going to be able to take care of you. Same thing with employees that you're hiring on from competing companies that have experience in the field that you're working in, and saying, yeah, you can be one of 5,000 sales representatives for that company, or you can be one of 20 here. You can be working directly with the owner and building something, have more opportunity, no glass ceiling above you, opportunity to grow and become a leader within the company. And a lot of it is approaching them and selling them on your vision of building a great company.
Well, I'll tell you this, one person that I used to work for who became a business associate of mine did convince me that you may not be able to directly compete against that $100 million entity, but people love good service and they'll pay for good service. And when you're able to give your attention and your service that beats the heck out of some machine that has no interest in working with the customer, and we major companies in the country that they don't care whether you're there or not there, because there's no entrepreneur that's pushing it.
Michael, on that note really quick, one of the points of going up against a big competitor is this: as an entrepreneur, you need to know that company that's been in business for 50 years, 100 years, they're not your competitor. You don't view it that way. You can use their advertising, how they get exposure to customers to your advantage. And you don't have to take over the industry or to eat the whole pie. You just have to get a little sliver and you can be successful.
Very true. Very true. Well, it looks like we're coming to our next break here. What I'd like to do is in the next session kind of talk about what's the big picture plan. Now that you've got the company rolling along, how do you protect yourself from going under? We've all been in that place where all of a sudden you're doing well and stupid mistakes are made. And so when we come back, let's look at that, what your plan is and how you will protect yourself from having the business get hit with a bad situation based on what's going on in the market.
All right.
Okay. We will go to break now, and we'll be back in a minute.
The Internet's #1 talk station. #1 talk station. VoiceAmerica.com.
At Intuitive Strategies, LLC, we provide services to our clients that help them develop a strong education in business, and we also help them to develop a strategy that will allow them to turn their skills into a profit, protect their business and personal assets, and plan for a successful retirement. Our consulting and structuring services include business analysis, budget analysis, management analysis, ability to raise capital from investors, tax planning to minimize tax liability under code, as well as legal structure to protect business from frivolous lawsuits. Resolution Capital Strategies also provides document preparation services such as business structuring documents, documents that establish an entity, management agreements, retirement plans, estate planning, wills, and trusts. Let Resolution Capital Strategies help you with your business. Visit intuitivestartup.com or call us in Tucson at 520-425-8759. Visit intuitivestartup.com today.
Streaming live, the leader in Internet talk radio, voiceamerica.com.
You are listening to Strategies for Financial Survival with your host, Michael Figueroa. If you have a question or comment about the program, please send us an email to support@intuitivestartup.com. That's support@intuitivestartup.com. Now, back to Strategies for Financial Survival.
Welcome back, everyone. And so when we left off, I asked Danny to consider what are the main areas that he has to think through and plan so that as you grow and you're doing your business successfully, how do you protect yourself against making the wrong decisions and going broke or having your company lose a lot of money because you overextended or the market's changed? And in today's world, we're all looking at what's going on. We see in the news the fiscal cliff, higher tax rates, high inflation, maybe high interest rates. Most people don't know what is going on. Will they be laid off or not? So in anyone that's had business that they're working on now, how do you plan for these situations? And are you going to expand? Are you going to stay where you're at? Are you going to downsize? What is the thinking that you have for your business in light of what's going on in the economy right now and what you hear on the news?
Sure. I think that my business and specifically what I operate in is a little bit unique compared to the general company type of business out there. But at the same time, what I'll say, I think naturally just applies to every single kind of business out there. 2 points that I definitely would suggest in ensuring that you can steer away from going under, from running into some serious setbacks and pitfalls in your company. First thing is this. As you're hiring individuals to come and work with you, you need to make sure that they are the correct individuals with the correct skill set. For example, I've seen a lot of companies in various different types of industries be built and started by 3 or 4 salesmen from a different company. And my question is this, is why would 3 or 4 salesmen go and start a company? All 3 or 4 of them possess the same exact skill. And you have to be able to diversify all the skills that are brought to the table. As we're growing as a company, we've expanded into multiple different states, and we're building up a corporate staff to support the company. Every single individual has to be possessing the correct skills and traits and qualities that are going to complement the company. You can't so much as hire an individual just to fill a position, because maybe you're going to be bogged down with 2 or 3 months of training that individual and bringing them up to speed. Whereas you could have hired an individual that already had that training done, that already had that skill set. And so then you utilize your time on other areas in building your business. You have to hire the correct individuals. The second thing is this, and related to the economy, related to the taxes, related to, whether it's health insurance or anything that is of great concern in our economy this day and age, because of the financial liabilities that it could put on a company. The number one thing that you cannot stop doing as a company is producing. You have to produce, because if you stop producing, you are not going to have money coming in the doors. Now, I know that sounds very general, but at the end of the day, that is what a startup is. I'm not talking about a company that's been in business for 20 years. I'm talking about a company that's been in business for the first 10 years, especially in the last 10 years that we have lived in this country. You have to continue to produce and bring in that money, bring in revenue to the company. If you stop investing into your sales growth, I think that you're going to incur a lot of problems. And the reason why is this. There have been moments in the span of the last 5 years of Capital Connect when we've heavily invested into, whether it be corporate staff, but then we didn't have the sales to complement all of the investment on the corporate staff side. When we didn't have the sales, sometimes it would become a struggle to pay all of the bills, pay all of the salaries and everything of that nature. And so making sure that you're not getting ahead too heavy on the corporate side or too heavy on the sales side is an interesting balancing act and dynamic that you're always going to have to be evaluating, not on a monthly basis, not on a weekly basis, but on a daily basis, and understanding the patterns of your production for your company so that when you're expanding, you're not investing into things that really aren't going to pay off. For example, with healthcare coming down as a mandate starting in 2013, that's going to present a lot of concerns for a lot of companies. I've read numerous articles. For example, just yesterday, I'm sure a lot of people read this on the news as well. There's a business owner in Florida that owns 40 Denny's restaurants, and he's cutting the majority of his employees' hours down to 28 or less in order to help out with the cost of providing health insurance for that mandate. Or he's also adding on, I think it was a 5% additional tab to each check for each patron that comes in and eats, just to be able to afford the costs of healthcare that he's going to be required to provide. As a business owner, when you're looking at these additional costs that you might be incurring, whether it's health insurance or whether it's new regulations within the industry that you operate in. For example, our headquarters are based here in Tucson, Arizona. And just last year, the city of Tucson, they imposed a $20 permit application on every single security system that we provide in their city. Well, $20 doesn't sound like a lot of money to a lot of people. But when you times that by thousands of customers, that's going to be, a dent into your margins. And when you aren't conscientious of the small expenses, such as a $20 permit application on one cell, that you're going to lose money. You have to be conscientious of all of the small spending items, all of the small costs, new regulations, new laws coming into play, and figuring out how to counter those. You can't make them go away. I can't go to the city of Tucson and ask them to remove that $20 permit application for every single customer that we protect here in the city of Tucson. But what I can do as a business owner is figure out some way, somehow, in order to cover that cost, that $20 permit application fee, whether it is passing it on to the customer themselves or something of that nature, so that it does not impede on the margins of the company. You can't be in business to break even. You just can't, because if you are, you're not going to be in business. You have to protect your margin. And I'm not talking about to become a millionaire or billionaire. No. Most in a startup company, almost all of the margin goes directly back into your company in order to build it up and grow it. And if you don't have that margin because of new incurred expenses, whether they're taxes from the local government, county government, state, or federal, you have to be prepared for those things and have a plan in place that when those new laws go into place, you can roll out your new structure in the sales process of funding these expenses.
Yeah, one of the things that I've seen a lot of that you're hitting on is you can't, as they say, sit on your laurels. You've got to be ever vigilant to make sure that you're managing your budget, you're watching what's happening, just like exactly what you said about the healthcare law and other tax. These things are going to impact your business, and you've got to understand how to deal with them, how to work within it, and how that impact is going to affect your customers and your budget. And there's just no way around that. So unless you're capitalized with millions and millions of dollars of public money, which then brings up the issue of would you consider or not putting debt in a company, and why or why not would you not or would encumber the business with credit lines, which of course I remember the days that the banks would just be so anxious to give you credit lines and loans for if you just were breathing, and then later on what happens is the market changes and you're stuck with major problems.
Taking on debt is not a bad thing. It isn't. Obviously, we associate the word debt with such a negative connotation. Poorly managed debt is a bad thing. Properly managed debt can be a very, very useful tool that can serve you very well. A lot of entrepreneurs will take on debt, but they will not be producing at the same time that they are taking on debt. And I'm sorry to beat, a dead horse with, I'm always talking about selling, producing, but at the end of the day, that's the name of the game. If you bring on debt, you need to know that it can be paid back exactly on the time and terms that it are stated for that debt. And simultaneously, you need to know that debt, where it's being invested, not just into some black hole into your company, but specific areas where you will have an ROI of that debt. What are you investing it into? How soon will you make that money back? How soon will you be able to pay back that debt and the interest that's incurred on that debt as well? Don't bring on debt if you don't have a plan to be able to pay it back. Don't bring on debt if you're not producing as a company. You need to be able to produce as a company. I don't have a problem with debt as long as it is managed properly. Almost every great company out there in America has debt. And there are some that manage it properly and some that don't manage it properly. And you will know as a business owner what is reality and what is not reality according to the revenue that you're generating. And at the same time, I would assume that the investors or banks that are supplying that debt to you would have a pretty good blueprint of what is going on in your business, and they would then decide whether to provide that debt to you or not.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's very critical to understand the whole concept of managing the debt properly and using it for the proper way, so that you know that if you're going to invest it in the business is going to be able to generate enough income to pay that debt off. That's the prime objective, and not for speculative purposes, which I've seen so much of in my past, where businesses just take on debt and expand without thinking of what they're really doing and how that's going to be paid back.
I think another point about the debt in regards to just speculative purposes for this debt, don't bring on debt to pay yourself. And I've seen entrepreneurs do that in the past. That is destruction. You bring debt to grow the company. if you cannot produce enough within your company to pay yourself, then you have a serious problem. But you don't bring on debt in order to pay salaries, in order to yourself or anything of that nature. It goes into the growth and expansion of building up your company, and that alone.
Well, we're coming to the end of this session, and again, I want to thank my audience for listening in. Again, Danny, give your information if anyone would like to contact you, and what opportunities people would have if they wanted to communicate with you.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity that I've had to be here with all of you. Again, my name is Danny Gould, Gould. You can reach me at Danny, DANNY, at capital, CAPITAL, connect, CONNECT.com, or DannyGould13 at gmail.com as well, my personal email address. And my phone number is 520-591-7715. I'd be more than willing to offer any counsel or advice to any prospective entrepreneur in whatever stage of their business that they are in. And I think that I could provide some great advice for them.
Very good. We are coming to the close here. So I believe we will not be airing a show on Thanksgiving, but thereafter we will be. So thank you all for sharing your thoughts with us, and look forward to our next show, and we'll see what we're going to be covering on the agenda. Again, thank you, Danny, and I'll close now.
Thank you again for tuning in to Strategies for Financial Survival. Please join host Michael Figueroa again next Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Pacific Time on the Voice America Variety Channel. Until the next show, survive and succeed.